We're always glad when Brad McQuarrie can be back in town and be a part of us. Many of you may remember that he went on a mission trip. He's a medical student, and they took a trip down to, I'll let him tell you all the details, but they took a trip and we were praying for him. We were contributing some money to help him go. And so today he's back in town, and we asked, he volunteered, we asked if he would come and share with us a little bit about what happened during his mission trip. And so Brad, where are you? There he is. All right. He's got huge facial hair, and I almost didn't recognize him. Brad, come share with us.
I was coming to small places with you. I didn't want you to miss it. I just had to have a carol. Thank you.
Okay, so that was just a little something to try and show you a little bit of what we did before I start talking about it. So before I start though, I want to thank everyone. Your prayers meant a lot to me, and there was especially one instance where I definitely felt it, and I'll be getting to that in a little while. But I'm just going to let you know a little bit about what we did so you know why I went out there. So my school took a medical mission trip to Pachacutec, Peru, which apparently there's two different areas called Pachacutec, and I didn't know this. So there's a little city north of Lima, it's kind of like a little area, and if you can call it a city, and then there's apparently a district as well. We were in the little city, and it's a bunch of dirt roads and little shacks that go on for miles and miles. And so we went out there on April 3rd was when we got there, and we flew in, and we met Pastor Felipe, who was in one of those pictures with me and the doctor, who's the man in the background. He didn't speak any English, but he was one of the sweetest men I'll ever meet. And he ran a church called Iglesia Cristiana de Pachacutec, which is just a church in Pachacutec, and it's one of the only ones. It is a Baptist church, and obviously they speak Spanish. And there was a picture of me, I believe, playing the guitar there, and that was a lot of fun. But I'll just kind of start from the beginning. So we got there, and we stayed in a hotel that had one bedroom. There were two of us to a room, and we had a little scratchy blanket bed with the toilets there. You can't flush toilet paper, which is something we all found out the hard way the first time. And sometimes they don't flush at all, so you just kind of hope for it. And of course, the showers aren't really hot either. But you know, you get used to it after a few days. So we got there, and we immediately started setting up the clinic. So we set it up in the church, and the church is not finished. In fact, almost no building there is finished, because apparently if you finish it, you have to pay more taxes on it, so you kind of leave one part not quite so done. And so we didn't really have any walls, and you just kind of let the wind sweep through there. Thankfully, there's no rain. We were in a desert. I guess that's thankfully. But we didn't really have water either, except for more bottles of water. But it was a great experience. So we got to see a lot of different people in the clinic. We worked it over 4 days, and we saw everything from people with parasites, which is extremely common there, to people who, like the one child in the picture, who stepped on glass and left it in his foot for 2 days because he didn't have anywhere to go. So we got to cut that out of him and send him on his way. And it's really heartwarming to see a lot of people who, they don't really get health care there. It's something that we got to bring to them, and that was a lot of fun. And I got to spend Easter Sunday at the church. Didn't understand but a word or two as he was preaching, but you can feel the message. And I have to say too, there's definitely something we can learn from them as a church, because every time they play music, everyone just immediately stands up. And they immediately start clapping in rhythm, and my hands have never been so sore, because they do like 20 songs, and every single one you're supposed to clap in rhythm, and they clap in rhythm too. Which, I know that's difficult. And then they get all fancy with it, you know, some are up here, some are down here, some have this thing going on. I've never seen so many creative claps in my life. It's so much fun there. I actually had the pleasure of getting to play guitar for them, and so I imagine that was kind of the reverse. They probably didn't understand a thing I was singing. But I got to do Oceans and 10,000 Reasons for them, and that was just such a great experience. And every night for the duration of the clinic, we had a children's camp. And so we had about 50 children every day who would come in, and they would, you know, do art projects. We'd do like a Bible study. We also had like a women's class and a teens class. It was so great. And the first day, we had kind of like this big game night for all the kids so that they could, you know, go out and tell their friends and everything. And we had this box of ring pops. We had 50 of them. And we were like, oh, there's like 45 kids here. We've only got 50 ring pops. Don't know what we're going to do. We're just going to have to make sure each one gets one. And so the girl who was supposed to be watching it, her name was Rena, she turns around for a little while to help a kid. She gets back over there and there's like 5 ring pops left. She goes up. So we're going around, we're trying to figure out who's got the ring pops, and we sent Diego, who's one of our translators, to go try and find it. And he's going around and going, do you know where the ring pops went? Do you have any ring pops? And he finds this kid, he's got his back to the corner. And he's sitting there like this. And he says, do you have any ring pops? The kid turns around, he's got one on each finger. And he goes, he says, where'd you get those? So, needless to say, not every child got a ring pop, but thankfully they all came back. And we got to see over 1,000 people in the clinic that we treated for everything from eye problems to dental problems to parasites, infections. One lady who had actually broken her ankle months ago and had not gotten it treated. We couldn't move it. There was very little we could do for her except pray for her and tell her she needed to go to the hospital as soon as she possibly could. There's a lot of teen pregnancies there, a lot of young women who get married at a very, very early age, and a lot of children who kind of run around in the streets, as you saw. There's also a lot of dogs there, which is probably part of the reason I got sick, but The dogs are all stray, and the people kind of ignore the dogs, and the dogs kind of ignore the people, and they just kind of go on their way. So that's definitely different than we experience here. And also, don't drink the water if you ever get a chance to go. That's not a good idea. And it was really, really great I got to work in the eye clinic for one day, and I think the craziest thing is to see someone come in who can't see a thing, and they don't really realize they can't see anything, so they're squinting and they're staring, and they're like, oh, my daughter made me come in. And when you put these glasses on them, and the face they make is just the most heartwarming thing you've ever seen, because they suddenly can see again, and it's been years, and they don't realize that they've lost their vision. And they start going around, and they're, oh my gosh, I can see. And they're asking things like, does that always have that many letters, or is that new? So it's so incredible, and it was so great to be able to actually help people. Unfortunately, I was kind of a patient in the clinic for one day. I got sick on Tuesday afternoon, and I started feeling really lightheaded. I was like, no, it's fine, because I've been working in the clinic all day. I was like, I probably just got a little sick, I need some water. And then I sit down to eat, and I'm like, I think I'm going to pass out. And they were like, do you need to sit on the floor? Yeah. So they sat me down on the floor, and then they started throwing up. And they ended up taking me back to the hotel. And that night was the absolute worst night I've ever experienced. I was shaking and hallucinating and having fevers. And so they still don't really know exactly what I had, but it lasted for quite a few days. Thankfully, though, by Thursday I was able to get back out there and actually go to church with them. And you always hear these stories about things and you're like, oh, is that, I think you just got sick. That's not a spiritual attack. But, and I've been guilty of saying that too. I'm like, they probably just got sick. It happens. But the people who got sick were those of us who were definitely most interested in doing missions. There were 5 of us who got sick initially, and all of us were bedridden for one day. And that's where I really felt your prayers. I'm laying there in bed and I'm thinking, they're going to find me in here. They're going to find me half uncovered, half covered, because I can't figure out if I'm hot or cold. And I'm going to be in here in this hotel room in Peru. And I just felt this comfort wash over me. And I knew, I'm going to get back out there. I'm going to go to church tomorrow. I'm going to help someone. And so I got to go to church the next day, and they did, the same thing we hear all the time. They do a service, and they ask at the end, does anybody want to pray the prayer with me? And they say, everybody prayed out loud, and then if that was your first time praying the prayer, raise your hand. And I'm used to seeing it here where we all experience it all the time. You'll see maybe one hand go up, and I look out at the church, and I realize it's all these people we've been treating in the clinic all week. And I see, one hand goes up, and then another one, and then immediately there's about 50 hands go up. And he says, well, everybody come to the front. And so I got to go to the front, and I actually got to lead 2 women to Christ that day, which was so amazing because it was literally working from the ground up. They didn't know what they were hearing. They just said, they told me to come here after I came to the clinic. And she told me something that I won't forget, at least the English translation. I don't know exactly what she said, so I kind of looked it up. But she said, estamos aquí porque lo que hiciste, which is, we are here because of what you did. And I know that it's crazy to me to think that just because of what I did, because of what you guys did by helping me to get there, I was able to save 2 women from life in hell forever. And that's just what this is all about, We went there to treat people who aren't going to get treated so that they can have a better life, but really what it's all about is getting them to come to church, to hear the Word of God, and to actually get saved. And overall, I believe we saved about 50 people. And we saw 50 kids every day in the children's ministry. So we got to plant a seed in them and hopefully grow them. actually ended up leading another child to Christ as well. He brought his two brothers brought him up, and I got to pray with him. And you know, it's just so incredible because you made this possible. You helped me get through something, and I'm so blessed to have a church family that does that for me, that prays for me, that helps me to go out there. And I tried to send thank you notes to everybody. I know some of them came back and they didn't give me the right address, so I'll try and get around to thanking you personally if I haven't. Thank you all so much for helping me to get there, because that was the most incredible experience. Despite being sick, despite being bedridden for a day and a half, I absolutely had the greatest time, and I was so blessed to be there. So, estamos aquí porque de que